my secret to improving as drastically as I have in the last week is, hello everybody, and welcome back to A Nightlife Worth Living. Today we're going to be discussing how I went from really bad at watercolors to really good at watercolors in just a week. Now, thank you so much for the 300 subscribers. That is amazing. I never thought I would be here. I remember when I was just at 50, but I'm trying something new today. I'm going to be leaving everything world time. I did cut it up and, change up the editing style, but definitely comment down below if you guys enjoy this more than my other videos, because your feedback means everything, because I enjoy creating this content, but I also want you guys to like it too. But let's get into the video. Now, to start off, we're going to talk about supplies and just how important certain supplies are opposed to others. Now, when it comes to actually gaining skill in watercolors, you're going to want to have a really good paper. Now, no matter how good of an artist you are, if you aren't using the correct paper with watercolors, you will actually feel like the worst watercolorist in history. Watercolor paper is designed very thick for a reason, because it has to uphold to all the amounts of water that you are putting down. Now, I would suggest a bare minimum of 110 pound paper. Usually that's a multimedia paper. It's a little bit thicker. The only thing is, make sure that you work in layers. So make sure your layers are dry underneath, unless you are using a wet on wet technique. The other paper that I suggest, if you can afford it, is a 140 pound paper, and if you have the extra money, make sure it's 100% cotton. If not, a normal 140 pound paper or even a partial cotton 140 pound paper will be perfectly fine. This is just going to make it a lot easier and more seamless to actually put your color and pigment down on the paper without getting too stressed out about it peeling up and not being able to hold that water and warping excessively. The next thing I want to talk about is paints. Again, if you are a beginner, you don't really need a very expensive paint. I actually proved that with my Crayola watercolor paint test. I tested out those supplies, and I will leave the video here so you can watch it next. And honestly, it's really good paint for beginners. If you want something a little bit better quality, you can use Artist Lost or Praying. I used the Koi watercolor sketch book pocket, or whatever that was called. It was Koi watercolor pan set. It was a 24 set, but if you're really in a pinch, I would say go with a smaller amount of paint. So just go for your primaries and maybe your secondaries, a white and a black, and you should be good to go. The only other thing I would suggest is whether you want to get pans versus tubes. With tubes, it'll be less expensive and you can get better quality, because if you get just the primaries, a white and black, you can mix all the secondary colors, which I will talk about how to do that in a second. But if you don't want to have to do the hassle of all that extra mixing your individual colors, I would suggest a pan set. I am using the Arteza 36 pan set, and I also have my Cotman set in there as well, just because it has extra space for extra pans. These work perfectly fine. The 36 set here costs $34, and it's a really nice set. It also is light fast, so you can preserve your art for a really long time. That's kind of it when it comes to paint. Just get what you can afford, and if you really can't afford anything that nice, that's okay. Like I said, you can go rock yourself with some Crayolas and still create really pretty art. The next thing I wanted to touch on was what I was talking about with mixing your own colors. Now, if you're a beginner, I would suggest you get yourself a pocket color wheel. They only cost like $5. But if you can't get this, you can also go online and just look at the color wheel and just look up information on complementary triads, and also look at mixing primary colors. That's completely free. All you need is the internet. But I would definitely suggest spending the $5, getting the pocket color wheel, because it will show you literally how to mix every color in the rainbow, especially if you're already getting the tube paints and mixing your own pans. So that is that on the paint. lastly, you're going to want to make sure that you invest in watercolor brushes. You can get them at Walmart, Amazon. Just make sure that they're watercolor specified, because if they are for oils or acrylics, those tend to not hold water very well. And when you're working with watercolors, you don't want to be like me, which I have this gouache brush set because I'm waiting for my new brushes to come in. And these, I don't know, they're probably really cheap. They came with my jelly gouache, but they don't hold a lot of water, so I have to constantly dip in the pan, which can be a little bit frustrating, but you can definitely work very well with that. The ones that I suggest that I love using are the Creative Inspiration brushes. Those ones hold water very well. They spread pigment very evenly, and they're pretty cheap. They're only $10 for 5, which you get, a small, medium, and large, and then a couple of fine liners. So that's more than enough when starting off. Now, let's get into the actual tips when it comes to improving fast. You have to understand the basics of watercolors. Now, the number one rule is you're going to work light to dark. Now, the reason for this is because watercolors don't really lift off the paper all that much, especially if you're using a cheaper set. My Cotman watercolors lift a lot better than my Arteza, and it's all depending on the binders that they use and how staining the pigment is. When you are starting off, you want to make sure you pre-plan where your shadows are going to be, and you want to plan your highlights. So once you have that knowledge, now you have to get into using the correct amount of water. Since this is a water-based medium, you're going to need to make sure that you have lots of water on your brush. And when it comes to using the correct amount of water, it's going to affect how streaky your paints go on, whether it's a nice flat even tone, or if you're trying to do a wet on wet technique. The amount of water varies very much. So if you're using a lot of water or too much water, in some cases you're going to get a very wet look. The pigments are going to spread out pretty far, and the color is going to be a lot lighter than you might have intended. But the good thing about using too much water is if you're going to be blending two different colors, a wet on wet technique is going to be the best. Now, if you're going to be using not a lot of water, you're going to get a lot of streaks in your color. Now, this happens because the brush is very dry, so the individual hairs spread apart and you get multiple streaks of color. This is good if you're going to be doing foliage or coloring hair, because hair strands, there's a lot of them. If you're creating grass, it's a lot of singular strands and it can give you a very sporadic look. So just depending on what type of technique you're using, whether it's a wet on wet, a wet on dry, or a dry on dry, it's all going to depend on what you're trying to achieve in that moment. So definitely watch some different footage on how much water affects your watercolors, because that's going to help you improve the quickest. The next thing you want to do is, again, we talked a little bit about it, is working light to dark and understanding saturation when it comes to watercolors. Now with watercolors, when you put the pigment down on the paper, it's going to appear darker than it is when it is dry. So you want to do some test swatches and just play around with adding water to your rich tones. Next, we're coming back to that pocket color wheel. Now with this is going to help you understand how watercolors are going to mix. If you guys would like a more in-depth tutorial on color theory, or you would like more information on mixing colors, leave a comment down below and let me know if you have anything specific that you would like me to touch on. If you also want a video that is more specific to art supplies related, and an art supply haul and explaining exactly what each supply does, also comment down below and let me know. So the final thing I have for you guys is this. The final thing I have for you guys that is the biggest secret of all of how I went from this to this is you have to get out of your head. You have to understand that you have the skills to be great at painting. Don't think in your head that I can't do it or they are just better, because that's not the case. Professional artists create bad art all of the time, especially when they're jumping into something they're not used to using. But once you gain just the bare minimum knowledge, like I displayed here, and test out a bunch of different, methods, you're going to understand the medium a whole lot better, and therefore you're going to improve drastically because you already were like, I'm a pro at it, I just need this question answered. So as everyone knows, art is very subjective and it has to be improvised from the beginning. It's no different for you either. If you can color inside the lines, you have all the skills you need to be a great artist. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope I helped at least one of you understand how to be better at watercolors. And for anyone who's still watching, I got a new setup and I want to know, do you guys enjoy this new art process? So definitely comment down below and let me know if you guys like the real time more or if you guys like the sped up. I know that my real time is chopped up quite a bit because I didn't want you guys just sitting through me painting the hair all the way through. I just kind of chopped up to segments to match all of that. So definitely comment down below how you guys like this new editing style, and thank you very so much for 300 subscribers. It's a big milestone and I can't wait to see more of you get added to the Rupal family.